Hi, welcome to another Lawn Fawn video. I'm Kara, and today we meet up with our little mouse friends as they watch their buddy get carried away on a little joyride. And he's saying, floating by to say thanks. So we're making a thank you card today, and we're using the Swish and Pop pull tab with white cardstock and acetate, and a couple of brads, scripty autumn sentiments, window scene winter, the rug from Christmas Dreams, a mouse from You're Just My Type, one tree from Trees Before and After, a bunch of little pieces from The Perfectly Wicked, Dandy Day Flip Flop, and a mouse from Bubbles of Joy, You Autumn Know, a mouse and leaves, a rake and a speech bubble, and the window frame in white cardstock, and the valance and the curtain rod, and the valance and other pieces are from Sweater Weather Remix, the 12 by 12 collection pack. I'm using Lawn Fawn's acetate for the Swish and Pop pull tab and also a window. Well, let's start by making the indoor scene. So I'm using that pattern paper from the Sweater Weather Remix. Just going to put a floor, some yellow carpeting, onto a panel of 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch of that fabulous funky apple paper for the wallpaper, and I'm putting a tiny strip of white cardstock between them just to act as the baseboard. And so our window, that's a large window for this room. They're lucky mice to have such a pretty big window to look out. I'm going to trace along the inside of my window frame with a pencil just to give me some guidelines of where I need to cut out that window. And then I will stab the inside of my paper so that I can get some cut lines in there. And then I'll go from behind to actually cut out my lines. I have more control over my scissors when I come from the back of the paper. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm going about 1/8 of an inch wider than my lines so that it's covered completely by the window frame. I'm adding some 1/8 inch double-sided tape all around that window, and then I'll take off the release paper and add the acetate. So this is the back side of the window, and now we have some glass in there. I'm adding the 1/8 inch double-sided tape all around that opening as well, and then I can put that window right on there. I could have used glue as well, but I like the way the double-sided tape works with the acetate. It is not going to move anywhere. Now the window has to show the out of doors, and so I'm using jellyfish ink to create a scene out there. And I'm putting my window up against the paper several times just to make sure the images can be seen in the window. You can see I had some black ink residue on that tree, and it kind of shows up with the jellyfish ink. Now, if you don't want that, you just stamp it in the jellyfish ink and stamp it off on another piece of paper first. Just kind of clean it off and then restamp that jellyfish ink, and it's good to go. You won't see any lines. Now, you can see it in my rake too, but I kind of like that because it gives me some definition for those rake prongs. I'm putting in some wind here as well, but you won't see that when I'm all done. The reason I use the no line jellyfish ink was I want the outside to be subtle. I don't want it to take away from the scene of the indoors and the movement of the mouse outside. And those images will all be with black lines. So it'll kind of show the contrast there where these are a little less defined. I'm going to speed through the background coloring. You can see what I'm doing, but we're not going to take a lot of time with this. So I'm using YR20s for the yellow leaves, YR21 and 23, and the R05 and 02 for our red leaves, and then an R35 and 32 for our reddish pinkish leaves. And all of the brown areas are in E30s To give some perspective, the pile of leaves, which have larger leaves, is in the front, and that'll be right under the window there. And then the smaller trees will be in the background. Now, you really could do anything for your outdoor scene. I use the trees and this pile of leaves, but if you don't have those trees or you want to substitute that, there's plenty of other stamps that you can use to create your outdoor scene. And that's really the same with the mice that I chose. I used a lot of different stamp sets today, but you don't need to. It was just I had them, and I had the luxury of choosing which position I wanted the different mice to be in and finding the mice in the different sets that worked for that. And obviously, that's one of the things we love about Lawn Fawn is that you can really mix and match stamp sets together. All right, well, I'm deciding where this hill is going to be, the horizon, and I didn't want it to be straight across because I thought that would cut along with the window. So instead, I created a hill, and I'm using YG03, and it's kind of bright, and then coming down a little duller with the YG61, and then starting the sky, kind of put two dots up there so that I knew where I need to color. And I use kind of a swirling motion with my coloring so that I don't have any streaky lines. With the B000 and then blending with the B34, kind of give it a darker blue color instead of the B000 is a brighter blue on its own, and I wanted to darken that up a bit. All right, well, now it's time to stamp out the main images, and I'm using Lawn Fawn's Jet Black ink. It is Copic friendly. I stamped out a few more images there, and I will actually have one more mouse that you don't see coming along. All of the little bits and pieces in the room are colored with the same Copic marker colors for the most part. Well, that was an R37, and here's my B34 for the book. And then what I'd like to focus on, though, are the mice. And I already went through with a light cool gray and found where I want my shadows. And so I'm coming in with the C4 to get into those shadows so you can see where those would be. Over to the left, I have the couch and rug and those little throw pillows stamped onto pattern paper and cut out with coordinating dies. And this is all from Sweater Weather Remix 12 by 12 pack. I just love how it has those different patterns that look more like texture for the valance and the matching couch, and then the pillows and matching rug. I mean, these mice, they knew what they were doing. They were working hard to get their house well coordinated. All right, back to our mice. You can see I'm coming in now with the C2 and blending that C4 into their body a little bit more. And then I'll blend that even more with the C1. And that's it. I'm not going any lighter in my coloring. I tend to blend it out to the point where I lose some white. And I wanted to keep a little white on them for the contrast. Everybody with ears and cheeks and noses showing gets a little bit of R32. And then I like to kind of diffuse that a little bit in their cheeks by adding back in some of the cool gray. And now for that leaf, that's also going to be the R32 and 35. And then I'll darken that up with the R37. Using the coordinating dies for each of these images, I'm going to attach them with some low-tack tape and run them through my die cut machine and cut them all out. Well, here they all are together, waiting to get into their positions in the living room. I decided I wanted to put a little bit of shading on the couch and the valance, so I'm using a BG23, and I'll also use a 13 just to get into those deeper parts of the couch, make them look like they're behind the other parts a little bit. And I'll color the legs of the couch with a darker color, so an E37, kind of hide the pattern of the paper there and create the folds in the valance as well. A time to hang those curtains, and I had my 1/8-inch double-sided tape handy, so I used that to hang them up, and I'll use some glue for the curtain rod. Now, I wish those mice had used the level when they hung these curtains because I think they're a little off. The right side is just a tad higher. All right, well, I can get picky there. We're always picky with our own work, aren't we? All right, well, let's get back to decorating this room, putting a little shading on their rug. And this is a B66, and then I'll blend it in with the B63. I thought that this was a color that coordinated well with that pattern paper. So here I'm just blending that in a bit. And the shading just gives a little more depth to these images. Now you could also just ink blend the edges and get some depth that way. But for that couch, it's easier to go in with a marker and get the crevices of the back part of the couch. All right, putting the couch in place here and the rug. Throw on those throw pillows, and all their furniture coordinates with their wallpaper. Now, that wallpaper, whew, I don't know. Would you put that in your living room? I'm not sure if I would. Well, it's fun. It's a lot of fun and a lot of color for them as well. And they're mice. I don't know. It's a preference thing, I guess. So all the mice are in the room figuring out what's going on in the window, except for the little guy reading his book. He's kind of enthralled there, not thinking about what's going on outside. Decided to put some bookshelves next to the window, just give it a little more interest up above the stuff going on the floor. So I'm using one bookshelf split in half and one stack of books split in half, and now we have bookshelves that will flank the window. Boy, these guys, they really did. They even coordinated their books to go with their wallpaper. Okay, I know. I can get a little carried away. I'm flipping over the panel and cutting off the excess of the bookshelves and gluing on the books. And yes, these shelves are a bit high for those mice. I don't think that stool down there is going to get them up high enough. But anyway, onto the outside, I'm seeing how my mouse looks through the window and can I really see him well. I didn't want the background to compete with that at all, but given the busyness of the wallpaper and then that outside scene, I thought it would be better to put some vellum in the background. So make that background a bit hazier so that way he will really be seen. And in order to get this vellum tacked down, I wanted to put a piece right up by the scene so that it would stay flat to the paper, and then I put some tape around the edges too to tape it all down. Well, now we can start putting the Swish and Pop pull tab together, and the first thing I want to do is figure out where I want to set this hole. And so I'm going to take that brad and put the acetate piece and connect that to the handle, and then I can decide where or what hole that should be in and kind of play around with it to say, okay, yeah, here's where I want it to move. And this way I know it will get into the scene. And so I cut those holes, but I didn't want to cut extra holes up into my scene, so I cut it a little further away. But that hole guide helps me determine how far from the edge my hole should be. Now I've got a brad in that hole through the acetate, and here is my pull tab in action. And I'm looking to see how far up that arm will go and determine where to put my mouse on there and his speech bubble, and then attach that leaf to his hand so that he's kind of doing a backflip almost. He's being blown backwards through the air. I'm attaching that speech bubble and the mouse with some tape runner. If this was out in the open, I would probably use a glue dot because it would be stronger. But because it will be behind the window, it won't get tampered with, and I'm not worried that it's going to fall off. So, deciding how far down I want that mouse to sit so that you don't see the leaf, and then I'll put some foam tape as a stopper for the mouse on the bottom. But I'm also raising everything up with this foam tape so it will go all the way around the card, just making sure that I'm not going to hit anywhere that the mechanism is going. But before I go any further, I want to stamp the word "we" on his speech bubble. That way, whoever gets this card will see that he's having a good time and won't be too concerned for his welfare. I mean, nobody wants to see a mouse in danger. This way, I'll put their mind at ease and they can enjoy their card. All right, cutting off the excess acetate and add the foam tape all around, making sure he still moves freely. Put a tiny bit on the edge by the handle, and that keeps it in place as well. And now I want to see, how is this going to work? Is it going to work? Yes, it works just fine. Phew. But before I tape that down, I want to cut a notch into that front to give access to the handle. I line the 2 points on either side of the handle and make sure that that bar is flush against my card. And then I can run that through my die cut machine. And here it is, all cut out. I can now cut the handle flush with the card, making sure that it's pushed in all the way so the mouse is down at the bottom. And again, I flip it over to cut that off. It just makes it easier to see. I die cut the decorative edge for the handle and glued that on. And now I can take off my release paper. And yes, the decorative handle even matches the couch and the valance. They must have had extra fabric left over. Now I can add the front panel to the back panel and really careful to line that up and replace that stool that I had to leave when I put that little notch in there. And here is our floating mouse. Whee! Why is he floating past? Let's put a sentiment inside to give him a reason. My sentiment comes from You Autumn Know and also scripty autumn sentiments. So it says, floating by to say thanks. Now all that's left is to add the double panel to the front of the card. I'm going to use my tape runner, put some adhesive on the back, and I'm putting it everywhere just to make sure it won't come off. Line that up, and this card is all done. Let's check it out. There he is, all caught up in a gust of wind. Well, I hope you enjoyed the card today, and it inspires you to make a swish and pop pull tab window scene for yourself. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. Bye!